Okay. I'm going to turn on the subtitles now. There we go. All right, here come folks now. Welcome in, everybody. I'm going to turn on the chat for everyone as well. There we go. Welcome in, everyone. As you're filing in, we're just going to wait a minute or two here to let folks file in. We've already got kind of a quorum going. If you wouldn't mind popping your name and where you're calling in from in the chat, just to get the conversation started. We try to make these webinars as interactive as possible. Hi, Deborah. Glad to see you with us again. That's awesome. We try to make these webinars as interactive as possible. So we're going to start with Gary and our guest Alex chatting for about 20-30 minutes, and then I'll pop back up and let everyone chime in. I'll read out your questions. So to that point, I'll be monitoring the chat and the Q&A function, which you'll see along the bottom of your Zoom window. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns, pushback for either of our speakers today, that's great. Okay, here come some names now. We've got Deborah Conrad. Well, and Happy New Year to you. Yes. Charlie Howell, an old friend and champion of ours at Eli. Stephen Taylor, always nice to see you. Tim from Grand Valley State University in Michigan. Grand Valley's a great school. I'm an MSU grad, but I have a lot of friends who went to Grand Valley myself. Mark from Asheville in the Land of Sky area. Oh, great. Yeah, we have someone else I've been in contact with from Land of Sky Mountain Area Workforce Board. That's awesome, Mark. Welcome, Sophia. Welcome, Becky.
And Alex, we should talk about that intersection between workforce development and the corporate entrepreneur.
Yes.
There's probably some interesting conversation to be had about that. How do we reconcile those two ideas?
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a lot we can talk about there.
Yeah. Hi, Elena. I gave a talk at City University of New York on Monday in Manhattan, and Elena was there. Welcome back, Elena. Thanks for joining us.
That's awesome.
And we've got Ernestine from the UK. Fabulous.
Oh, and Jen Hall. Hi, Jen. Barbara, Willie Hill.
Willie.
Good to see you, Willie.
This is our fan clubs here.
I know, right? Yeah, they're coming in too fast. Okay, well, without further ado, let's not keep the people waiting anymore. I'm going to turn my camera off here in just a second. But as you probably heard when you were joining, we are recording this. So you will receive a recording typically within 24 hours of the presentation ending. We'll have the transcript and I'll include some other helpful links in the follow-up email there. So without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic over to Eli founder and CEO Gary Schoniger to kick things off.
Thank you, Nick. And thank you everyone for joining us. I'm really excited to have this conversation with my friend Alex DeNoble, who is just releasing a new book called The Entrepreneur Within. Alex, you just retired, if I had this right?
It's coming up. It's coming up in October. I'm doing one more semester, and
you just can't let it go.
Gotta close 40 years out in a nice round way. So
wow. Yeah. Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, Alex. I'm really excited to have this conversation with you and talk about your new book, some of what you've learned, where you want to take these ideas. I feel like we're kindred spirits in that we both understand the value and the impact of cultivating entrepreneurial mindsets in individuals, entrepreneurial culture in organizations. So let me just start and ask you, Alex, why is this important now in the corporate world? Why is innovation and entrepreneurship important now?
That's such a great opening question, Gary, because you see that we're in a significant what I call a punctuated equilibrium. we've had status quo for quite a number of years. And then all of a sudden, some external factor, like a pandemic, amplified by changes in emerging technologies and social and political upheavals, these are all forces that are radically changing the way we live, work, and play. And that has a lot of impact on corporate decision-making, because I divide the world, Gary, in three parts. I mean, there's pre-COVID, that was our normal way of doing things, how we had to react in a crisis during COVID, and now we're in this emerging new normal, and companies are trying to figure that out. And that's why I think it's so important and urgent that companies embrace the entrepreneurs within their own ranks.
Yeah. And so, there's maybe a double entendre in your title. Can you explain why you picked that title?
There is, and I have been immersed in this book, and the title hit me in a shower one day when I thought about it. But the entrepreneur within just felt so right for what I was trying to do with this book, because I've been an entrepreneurship educator. I've worked with entrepreneurs for many years, and I feel that spirit. It's the entrepreneur within you, but it's also the entrepreneur within existing organizations. And that's why I call it the entrepreneur within. You don't have to quit your day job to experience entrepreneurship. So it has that.
I love that. I love that, Alex. I was thinking of something similarly lately. Like, you don't have to quit your job to become an entrepreneur, but you have to think about work differently.
You do. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what, like, part of the reason I'm excited to have this conversation is because I think you and I are kindred spirits in so far as, like, we've got to expand the understanding and the of entrepreneurship to beyond just that narrow definition of the startup kind of world.
Right. Yeah. Gary, I mean, it's the work that you're doing. I totally embrace it within this book, because it's all about an entrepreneurial mindset. And you've been a champion of that for many years, along with our colleague, Deborah Conrad, and so forth. But, people are beginning to understand the importance of having this cognitive, this mindset and the confidence in your own abilities. And so to me, that's what I tried to amplify in the book. People that expressed entrepreneurial mindset to make significant and positive change within their organizations. Yeah.
So let me piggyback on that for a minute, Alex, because, I'm loosely working on something I would call entrepreneurial mindset theory. And one of the basic ideas here, Alex, is that non-entrepreneurial behavior is learned. That we're all innately curious. We all have the capacity to be creative. Yes. We all want to be engaged in work that matters, to contribute, to be recognized. That's not just in some of us, it's in all of us.
All of us. That's right.
Right. And I love this idea that, what you're saying, that the entrepreneurial potential is latent in the organization. And so that's what that's a double entendre. Like, it's that desire is in all of us.
And to express that desire, that's the critical. I mean, that's what I'm trying to amplify here, is that, all of us have ideas, but only some of us decide to act on those ideas, whether it's to do a startup or to present a new idea inside of their own organization. And having the ideas and acting on those ideas are two different things, and it requires an entrepreneurial mindset and self-efficacy, a belief in your own abilities to execute on what it takes.
Yeah. I think about like entrepreneurial readiness in terms of like capability and commitment or motivation.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like you could be capable, but if it's, maybe what you're doing is working just fine. You're being promoted, you're being congratulated for what you're already doing. You don't need to be, if it's not broke, don't fix it, right?
Well,
the need to be entrepreneurial comes from, a dissatisfaction with the status quo. But I want to come back to your premise that a lot of people have ideas, but only some of them act on those ideas. Why do you think that is?
I think it's part confidence in one's own abilities. Now, I've done a fair amount of my research work has been in the area of self-efficacy and self-efficacy development, because that to me is a precursor to action, having the confidence in your abilities. Now, in a corporate environment, you're up against a lot of roadblocks. There's corporate hierarchies, there's structures, there's the bureaucratic nature that I try to address, and some of the challenges facing companies that to have an entrepreneurial culture. But part of it is a pathway. And what I tried to do in the book is give people a pathway. If you have an idea, how do you navigate the corporate environment to bring that idea through to fruition?
So you're saying, like, how do you act on ideas in spite of? In spite of
or in harmony with an organization. So
but I'm saying, like, in spite of the roadblocks.
In spite of the road, yeah.
In spite of the
roadblocks, right? We talk a lot about dealing with resistors, and I have several chapters in the book that focus on, you've got an idea. That idea is going to have implications throughout the organization, through your manufacturing processes or your distribution or other business processes are going to be affected if you can implement your idea, and you will encounter resistance. And what I tried to do is learn from people who've addressed it through stories, through the people that I've interviewed, to come up with some ideas and approaches for how to deal with that.
Yeah. That's really an interesting conundrum, Alex, in my view. That, I'm working with a college in Los Angeles right now, like taking a leadership team through entrepreneurial processes. And what I'm finding is that, the idea of identifying and solving problems is very easy to teach. These are high functioning leaders. That part's easy. And I'm sort of like guiding these folks away from a managerial mindset, which is just come up with the solution and issue it via edict. And to do customer discovery and like start to understand, who are the stakeholders, how, and get buy-in and so forth. And when they come up with a solution and then it doesn't get implemented, they tend to they just stopped. They just get stopped, and they say, well, if the boss isn't going to force them to do it, I guess there's nothing else I can do. And I'm saying, well, wait a minute. Do you think it's hard to sell an idea inside your organization? Let's take away your paycheck and go out there and try to sell your idea out in the world. Do you think it's any easier?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and I think part of the idea, what you're saying, if I understand you, is you have to learn how to sell. You have to be persuasive. You can't just, you know, oh, I have a good idea. My boss didn't listen to me. Like, that's just bullshit, right?
You know, yeah, go ahead.
No, it's just the implementation of the idea, innovation and the problem finding, problem solving is easy. The implementing of the idea, achieving buy-in, is a whole different kettle of crazy.
Right. You know, and that's the core of what I've written in the book. And, you know, sometimes taking showers is a real place for creative ideas to pop into your head. So in another shower episode, I'm trying to figure out, because I've been interviewing so many people, more than 30 that made it into the book, and just looking for patterns. And all of a sudden, what popped into my head was the FBI framework for corporate entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
And so I said, wow, framing, you've got to be able to frame your idea so that decision makers can embrace it. They can see how it makes sense for the organization. Now, there's a lot of elements to that. You've got to be able to get buy-in. And part of that comes from finding champions, finding sponsors, and recognizing the sources of resistance and figuring out how to address those sources. And then you have to think about implementation. And so the whole book is framed around framing an idea, obtaining buy-in, getting implementation for the idea. And that became my organizing framework for the book.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. The thing that I'm struggling with in my own work is how to help someone determine is are you stuck because of your own beliefs? You know, are the barriers external or are the barriers internal? Right? And how do we figure that out? Because it's so easy for people to say, I've done everything I can. I'm at a dead end until my boss will advocate for this. And that may or may not be the case.
You know what, Gary, that's reactive versus proactive. And what this book is about is a proactive approach. You know, so you know, it's not just I've done everything I can without really thinking strategically about how you can approach it by framing it. There's a lot of thought that goes into framing an idea around strategic fit for the organization, being able to leverage existing resources. I mean, those are framing that decision makers can see as making sense. You know, and then the other elements of it, it's a strategic approach to how do I take my ideas and really have a chance to run with it. And, you know, so I've presented it conceptually, but it's all backed up by stories of people who have not consciously, but subconsciously, they've taught me through our conversations how they did it. And those are the patterns that evolved into this framework.
Yeah. Well, the story narrative, like I said, intervention narrative is really, really powerful. But what I want to come back to, I want to dig into something here with you, Alex, that, you know, in my experience, like good ideas usually start out as bad ideas.
Yeah.
Right. And it's just this iterative, experimental thing until the true idea sort of one day just kind of plops out.
Right.
You know, it's not a eureka moment.
Correct.
It's rarely a eureka moment. And Stephen Johnson wrote about this in like his book, Where Ideas Come From, Where Good Ideas Come From, which I
Right.
highly
Yeah.
recommend.
Yeah.
But it's not a eureka moment. It's this like, you got part of a hunch, you're grinding away at it. You make a little advance in the shower, like you said,
Well, I mean, I had a couple of eurekas in the shower, but
I'm saying,
I totally agree with you.
the challenge is like, at what point do you start to like try to implement? I mean, do you like micro experiment? In my world, in traditional entrepreneurship, I'm a big advocate of micro experimentation. Try lots of little things on a small scale. I'm a big fan of evidence-based entrepreneurship.
Yeah.
Not opinion-based, and that might clash with the corporate thing, but do you just have an idea and take it to your boss, or do you try to make a case, like an evidence-based case for your idea? What can you say about that?
I mean, I learned, I've always taught, like you, the value of iterating on ideas and the evidence-based. But where that really came home for me was in the writing of the book and the training that I received, because my coaches taught me how to write ugly early.
Oh yeah.
Write ugly early. I mean, it's messy. It's
I hate that.
messy. And then you start working with it. And when you're willing to iterate and go through these different processes, that was really powerful for me. And then one of my chapters, as ties right into what you talk about, because I talk about small wins. I interviewed a guy named Adam Brotman who was a real innovator at Starbucks when they were just starting to enter the digital transformation age. Adam was a driver of that within the company. And I said, Adam, that's a big challenge. I mean, how did you get people? He said, Alex, it started with small wins, just like we're talking about, the small wins of that led to building of credibility. So when
that's right out of Albert Bandura's efficacy stuff. That's guided mastery. I mean, I know you're a fan of Bandura.
Yeah.
It's super important. And I think another component, to that, I'm just going to pile on with you, Alex. We're never going to get this covered anywhere near get this, topic covered in an hour, but, the small wins are super important. I'm so glad, I describe it as a bat hit the ball moment. Right. And as you know, that what Bandura said about that, those small wins should come at some reasonable modicum of effort. They can't come too easily, but they shouldn't be too difficult that you'll give up before you get there. There's that sweet spot that Bandura talked about. But also in there is, and this is sort of the secret sauce to the Ice House program, is the relatable social models. And if you can't see somebody that you can relate to succeeding in similar endeavors, the probability that you're gonna, the social model, if it's not there, like, why are you going to stick your head out? The probability goes way down. And I suppose that might be a segue into another question about why do organizations struggle to cultivate entrepreneurial culture in the organization? I mean, the entrepreneurial talent is there. It's within the organization. But I think the leadership can't see the ways in which the organizational structure inhibits the entrepreneurial tendency. Can you say more about that?
And I took that question on head on in chapter 2 of the book, Why Companies Strive. This is the name of the chapter, basically. And you talk about, hierarchies. Essentially, when a company starts and it evolves around its core business. And whatever that business is, and we talk about optimizing a business model. So a company tends to structure its organization to protect its core business. And that makes sense because there's rules, policies, procedures, organization structures that are designed to optimize.
Right.
But
Right.
then as people work in that environment, new ideas upset the status quo. Okay. And that's where resistance comes in. And that's where a lot of the challenges come in. Companies struggle with that because it's difficult to change when you've got an optimized organization.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's an inherent struggle between like creativity and productivity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I think, you know, there was a I'm going to try to find the name of this very quickly, but there was a paper sent to the President of the United States about science as the endless frontier, I think right after World War II. I forgot the guy's name. I was just reading about it this morning.
Mm-hmm.
And what this guy was saying was, and this became like the basis for the National Science Foundation and everything else. But what he was saying is that, you know, like efficiency is a myth. And you've got to allow the people that demonstrating curiosity and creativity. You can't predict what they're going to discover, but you've got to just give them some room and give them some leeway and let them discover, let them follow their thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately efficiency. And the way I think about this, Alex, is that I think of the managerial mindset as the other side of the entrepreneurial mindset.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it took me a long time to figure this out, but as I was struggling to find a clinical definition or framework for thinking about mindset, which I could not find.
Mm-hmm.
Even like Carol Dweck's work, she just calls it a way of thinking. It's sort of,
Mm-hmm.
it's inadequate for my purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And it finally occurred to me that mindset is to a person what culture is to a group.
Mm-hmm.
And it gave me that, so that our understanding of culture gave me the right framework to think about mindset. You could read anything you want about culture and replace the word culture for mindset, and it all works.
That's an interesting way to look at it. I mean,
right?
That kind of an analogy. I mean, the mindset is individual, culture is that
It's a collective mindset.
collective mindset. Very interesting.
Yeah,
way to look at it.
but back to what you're saying, which is so interesting, Alex, is that you know, so you know, Edgar Schein taught me this, that you know, you can't understand someone else's culture / mindset until you can understand your own.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it occurred to me, Alex, that the entrepreneurial mindset only appears enigmatic to the extent that one is steeped in managerial culture. Right? And so if you look at the values of management, you just said it. It's replication, it's efficiency, it's error reducing.
Mm-hmm.
And we need that.
We do. I mean, I totally embrace that. I mean, that's
the hard part.
That's what enables companies to reap profits.
Right.
It's
It's
the scaling and the optimization.
Right. But
the
values, you know, which are often unarticulated, they're level 3 in Schein's culture model, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're taken for granted, deeply held, which is
Mm-hmm.
all about efficiency and replication and linearity and error reduction.
Mm-hmm.
And we need that. But those environments are not conducive to experimentation and exploration, and which is inherently an error-inducing process.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the challenge that you're sort of presenting in your book, if I understand you. It's like, how do we reconcile that? How do we make room? Because, and I want to pose this to you as a question. I don't think you're saying to the individual, just figure out how to do it. You're also speaking to leadership and saying, you got to create the conditions to let this, to unleash the entrepreneur within.
That is an integral chapter in the book. I conclude with that in terms of, I could talk all day about the individual presenting and trying to negotiate their ideas, but it really requires an environment that's conducive. And, I draw upon, the work of Jeff Hornsby and Don Karatko. They've got a framework around. Jeff Coven is also an integral in this. They've got a framework that measures an organization's readiness for creating that environment for people to feel comfortable. And I think that's another side of the equation.
Like psychological safety.
Yeah.
Right.
Creating the environment, giving people time, as you just talked about, to work on new ideas outside of their core business. That was popularized by the 3M approach, but having time, structuring rewards and measurement systems that are conducive to it. There's these different elements that an organization can incorporate into their structure to make it more conducive for people to be creative within their organization.
Yeah, to tap into the entrepreneurial talent that's within the organization, the latent entrepreneurial talent within the organization. It's there.
That framework I was talking about, they call it the CEAI instrument, the Corporate Entrepreneurship. CEAI, I'm blanking on it now. Jeff is going to be mad at me, but the Corporate Entrepreneurship and Innovation instrument.
Okay.
What's
the guy's name? Jeff who?
Jeff Hornsby's at the University of Missouri, Kansas City, Don Karatko, and Jeff Coven at Indiana University.
Nice. I said something to you earlier, Alex, that the entrepreneurial, in my view, the entrepreneurial spirit's the human spirit. It's the desire. We don't all want to start businesses per se, but we have the self-actualizing tendency is sort of the basis of it. And, we did a project maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I forgot now. Mm-hmm. It demonstrates what you're saying, that the mayor of Albuquerque, New Mexico came to us and said, we want to teach city government workers how to think like entrepreneurs.
Right.
And, I thought maybe this was a prank phone call. Because, what do you think when people think of entrepreneur and they think of city government worker? These are the polar ends, and it sort of illustrates the way that we tend to default to trait-based assumptions about entrepreneurial behavior, which, as you know, doesn't really hold up in the research. But so, we initially put 100 city government workers through the Ice House program in the city of Albuquerque, and everything like from the sanitation supervisor to the law director.
Right.
Like and it, and Alex, I was really reluctant to even participate in this. Because I thought this is not going to end well, and like it was unbelievable. Like the sanitation guy, he didn't want to be there. He told me, like, arms folded the first 2 weeks in the class. He wanted to let the facilitator know, I don't want to be here. I got voluntold to be here. He had that defensive, sort of hostile.
Mhm.
And he figured out how to save the government like hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Like he said, on the second week, it just sort of clicked for him.
Mhm.
Now they're putting all 6,000 city government workers through the program, and the impact has been. And the guy that's driving the initiative, Tom Darling, became a good friend of mine. He said, not everyone's coming up with groundbreaking ideas,
Mhm.
but in the aggregate, what you have is culture change.
Right.
And I think that's
right.
And so, I don't know. I just wanted to make that point, Alex, because a lot of times in the corporate world, entrepreneurship, it's like a winner's game. It's like just the guy with the $1 million idea wins. Everybody else's ideas get thrown out the window, and it's back to
Mhm.
status quo.
Mhm. I mean, that's a great story that you shared, because I believe that anybody in the organization can do it. And I make a distinction because in a lot of the literature on corporate entrepreneurship, they're focused on big ideas,
Right.
game changers for companies. And I referenced a couple of articles that talked about there's no such thing as corporate entrepreneurship, because they really, when you emphasize big ideas and game changers, I believe you're missing the point. Just as you're saying, I made no distinction about the size or the magnitude of an idea, but the fact that somebody in the organization came up with an idea and had a way to navigate to see that idea come to fruition builds confidence, builds efficacy, and then it builds that culture that you're talking about.
Yeah. I love that, Alex. I love that. I'm glad you and I are on the same page there, because
Yeah.
I'm not opposed to like the venture-backed high growth model of entrepreneurship per se. I'm only here to point out that that's sort of the apex fallacy. That, there's a tiny, tiny fraction, infinitesimal fraction of new startups like start that way. And it skews our thinking about the whole area of entrepreneurship. And as I've been studying the dark horse entrepreneurs, the underdogs and the ne'er-do-wells and the misfits who start with nothing.
I think that's a great premise for, you get the stories, you'll talk to a lot of people, and the patterns will come out of those stories that
100%, Alex.
I evolve into your framework.
I really appreciate you saying that, because that's what it is. What are the common and controllable factors?
And you'll learn that through interviewing people and really immersing, going deep. And you're very good at that. You can open up conversations like this, and we can go deeper into discussions, and you'll see interesting patterns, I can assure you, by taking that framing of your approach.
Yeah, and just to piggyback that, and Nick showing his happy little face is an indication we should stop talking and start answering questions. But there's an interesting nuance in there, and I'm about to lose it. No, it's that one of the things that I've been struck by in my research, Alex, is the banality of the entrepreneur, the typical entrepreneur. Like, I can't detect any particular brilliance or charisma or creativity. They're not scholars necessarily. They're not the straight A's. And it's like, man, to your point, the entrepreneur within, like, it's the mismeasure of man. There's a metric here we haven't quite wrapped our heads around.
And I talk about that. It's This book, it contains stories of everyday people
That's it.
that
That's-
that
Yeah.
shared with me stories of whether it, and I didn't take into account the size of the idea, the magnitude of it, but the fact that they had something and they, whether it's a process improvement or whether it's taking a company into a new business or a new product line.
Yeah.
You know, those are, you know, that's important not to make that distinction, I think.
Yeah, that we shift people's thinking away from, you know, the great man theories around entrepreneurship,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I see hands being raised here, Nick. We've got questions, and
Yeah, so there's a good question, just kind of digging in more to what corporations are already doing. So Clint Day asks, do big corporations actually use things like the Google design sprint teams? Are other people doing things like Google, and how effective is that? How replicable is that?
I think it's very replicable, and thank you, Clint, for asking the question. But I think it is very replicable because a lot of companies do embrace it, and we're often asked by companies within our own communities even to run sessions on how do you do this, how do you embrace a design thinking, because it's not just for Google. It may have, you know, I mean, it may have evolved out of there, but it really is applicable for any kind of organization. We use it with pure startups, in addition to existing companies.
yeah.
Great. I did find, I think, who you were talking about, Gary, with Silent Science, the Endless Frontier.
Yes, yeah, I saw it in there.
Yeah, Vannevar Bush is the name, and then he was the scientist who was also, he was the head of the U.S. Office of Science Research and Development during the Second World War. So there you go.
Thank you for that, Nick.
Yes, of course, of course. Rashid brings up an interesting point that I thought, you know, just piled on to what both of you were talking about, that culture kind of gives us everything, including our mindset. So that setting up the situation for things, yes, we have innate mindset mechanisms. And Gary, I know we've talked about that at length in your own writing, but I thought maybe the two of you could speak more to that piece.
Well, let me take a first whack at that, Alex. So I think what Rashid is referring to is like sort of the agency structure debate. Right. So mindset is about our individual agency, and culture is about the structural systems within which we function. And what I know about that is that, you know, there's not a clear cause and effect correlation. It's bi-directional. And you know, sociologists coined this term reflexivity, which is, you know, the extent to which you act upon the structure versus the extent to which the structure acts upon you. And I think that's what Rashid is getting at. Like, mindset shapes culture, and culture shapes mindset. But the point that I want to make, Alex, is that it's awareness. Like, none of this has any meaning if you're not aware. You know, I'm fond of this quote from Jung, in which he said, you know, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So the mindset helps us to become aware of the extent to which we are either influencing or being influenced by.
You know, Gary, I mean, that's the classic. I mean, you just brought me back to my days in my doctoral program. We would have extensive discussions about strategy versus structure. Is it the structure that influences the strategy, or does strategy determine structure? And I think you're right on in talking about it. It's really an iterative situation.
Yeah, it's fluid.
It's the fluid, the reflex, and the adaptability that.
Well, and that's ultimately what my first book was about. That's what Ice House was about. That's a guy with high reflexivity, right? This is an African American in the Jim Crow South in the 1950s who owns his own business. Right? He's got a 4th grade education. He's not allowed in the bank, but he's got money in the bank, right?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to read that story. I mean, it sounds fascinating, and it really represents, I bet you if I read it, I mean, I tease out the resiliency.
100%.
And the adaptability of, I mean, so I'm looking forward to reading that story now.
Yes.
My interest.
Well, yeah, and it came, Alex, I did some research for the Cisco Entrepreneur Institute in San Jose in 2008 to look at the entrepreneurship education ecosystem in North America. And in that research, I quickly found that the way entrepreneurship is being portrayed in a classroom is largely divorced from the reality of what a typical entrepreneur is actually doing. They don't have venture capital. They're not writing business plans. They don't have big ideas. They don't have lots of experience. Right. And so how do you explain this phenomenon? And I met this guy, Clifton Talbert, who, happened to be a Pulitzer nominee, became my co-author. But he was born in this community, and that was his Uncle Cleve. And he said the expected way of life was the cotton field for me.
Right.
Except for the fact that I went to work for this guy, my Uncle Cleve. He owned the Ice House, and he taught me these lessons. Right. And they're really lessons. We call it, 8 life lessons. They're lessons we distilled from hundreds of interviews. But to your point, the entrepreneur is within, and we have to create the conditions. These aren't extraordinary people.
No, they are ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That's how.
Correct.
That's how I look at it. And my definition of extraordinary, when it has that element of the small wins. It starts with that confidence building.
100%. 100%.
Credibility. It builds your credibility in the organization.
And it also builds the self-efficacy muscle at the same time.
Yes. Yes.
Right. Alex, my first business was a gutter cleaning business with a borrowed ladder strapped on the roof of my car. I mean, right.
That was small wins. And you reflect back on that because there was some learning that took place there that as you became more of a serial entrepreneur, you're reflecting back on that. And I bet you're still implementing some of those lessons.
100%.
That you learned back then.
Yeah. And, Nick, please feel free to interrupt us if you've got more questions.
It's good. It's good conversation. I don't want to change the subject yet.
But I think about this, in the implications of developing entrepreneurial mindsets in education, at home with our children, at work, in the workforce, and I think the big shift that you alluded to at the beginning of this podcast, the shift that needs to occur that a lot of folks aren't aware of perhaps, is that I think we need to shift away from other direction to self-direction. Other directed learning to self-directed learning, other directed work. I mean, how many people, find themselves at 40 years old feeling trapped in unsatisfying careers and feeling there's nothing they can do about it, right? We unwittingly, this is why the mindset's so important, come to assume that I am who I am, the world is the way it is. Someone else is going to tell me what to learn and do in order to be successful. I think that's,
your work is so important, Gary, because mindset is not, to me, mindset is not innate and part of your genes. Okay. It's something that can be learned, developed, and cultivated. And that notion of small wins to build your confidence and your credibility becomes
love that.
so important.
So I
I
am
love
going
that,
to interject because you're both hitting on the beginnings of an answer to the next question I had. So from Gail, what would you say to someone who says you cannot teach entrepreneurial thinking?
Oh, I love that question.
I do too, because if you could answer it, it would make our jobs a lot easier.
Well, you know what? I mean, you know, as an entrepreneurship educator, I get asked that question. I mean, when I'm in social gatherings and say, well, what do you do? Well, I'm a professor. Well, what do you teach? I teach entrepreneurship. And I always get, can you really teach someone to be an entrepreneur? And here's my stock answer. And Gail, maybe you can use it next time someone asks you. That's the wrong question to ask. The right question to ask is, can entrepreneurs learn? And you know, are they willing to learn? Because I can't put the fire in the belly of somebody, but give me somebody, and I say this to students because I get asked that a lot with parents. You teach someone to be an entrepreneur. Give me somebody with that fire in the belly, that desire, and we could teach them. We can help them to develop skill sets and competencies, and we can give them experiences that will develop their capabilities, and couple that with the fire in the belly. Sometimes magic happens.
Yeah, and the fire in the belly comes along the way too. I mean, I want to unpack this question because I get the very same question all the time, and my answer is yes and no. So first of all, you know, I'm saying that, well, actually non-entrepreneurial behavior is learned. And the fact that you are asking that question tells me that you are so steeped in a managerial paradigm, or that you're an entrepreneur and you just think it was genetically, you know, endowed. It's you know, it's hereditary. But I also think that the entrepreneurial mindset is not the cause of entrepreneurial behavior. And that's what I want to go on the record for here. It's the effect. It's an effect. The cause of entrepreneurial behavior is the self-actualizing tendency. It's our innate tendency towards growth that's in every living thing. This is the humanist psychological framework, right? The entrepreneurial mindset ensues as a result, as you say, Alex, of the self-efficacy. As the self-efficacy builds, greater goals ensue, you know, larger goals, and it sort of snowballs.
It snowballs, and to me, Gary, it goes back to something we talked about earlier. It's iterative because they build on each other. The efficacy contributes to the development of the mindset, but then the mindset, as that matures, contributes to the enhanced confidence in one's own abilities.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right.
Iterative.
But I want to come back to the question and come at it from a third angle, Alex. Let me come back to the question with the no side of it. You can't teach entrepreneurship, or you can't teach an entrepreneurial mindset with the same tools of coercion that are typically used in education. You can't use carrots and sticks to teach an entrepreneurial mindset. You have to tap into intrinsic motivation. That's the hard part.
And we struggle with that in academics, especially now in this emerging new normal. And we've created a conference, we call it the California Entrepreneurship Educators Conference. And our theme this year is re-engage, because, it's a different mindset entirely. And
individualized learning is
actually a critical part of it. And so we've got to facilitate a student's desire to learn and give them the room to express it.
Yeah, and to redefine success.
Yeah.
It's not a 4.0, it's not the right college, it's not the six-figure, it's individualized. And that's part of where the problems lie. Nick, I know we're running out of time here. Do we have any?
Yeah, I wanted to give Alex a chance to let us know where folks can either pre-order or order the book, because we did have a couple of questions about that directly. So I wanted to give.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, here's the book. It's called The Entrepreneur Within. But it will be available for distribution. I'm learning how to set everything up on Amazon and so forth by the end of the month. But I'll give you a little secret. One of the things that I'm hoping to build momentum around the book, and for those of you that would like a electronic version of the book, for a limited 30-day period, I'm selling the book for 99 cents on Amazon.
Oh, wow.
So for, if it'll be like a 30-day or something introductory offer, it's up on Amazon now as a Kindle book. The paperback will be available later in the month. But I do have a request. If you buy the book for 99 cents, and if anything resonates with you, I'd really appreciate it if you'd leave me a review. That means a lot when one's trying to introduce their book into the marketplace. So the Kindle book is available now, 99 cents for a limited time. And the paperback will be available at the end of the month. If you're going to USASB next week, I have paperbacks that I'll be doing a book signing, and we'll also be making it available at a book signing at the California Entrepreneurship Educators Conference at San Diego State in April 20th to the 22nd. Check our website out at lavincenter.stsu.edu.
That's great. And thank you, Jen, for popping that link in, as I was too. So there's 2 links for you folks to find that limited time offer 99-cent version. That's super exciting, Alex. And I hope we get some good reviews for you, because
I would be thrilled to see some reviews. That's to a new author, that's so meaningful for that people would download the book, read it, and leave a review. It really helps a new author effectively enter the market.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, it's an exciting time, Alex. I'm super excited for you to get this book out there, and I know the hard work, the heavy lifting that you've done to make all this happen. Really
so much. It's
enjoyed this conversation, and I want a chance to continue the conversation, and I'll follow up with you afterwards for a podcast interview. We can do continue the conversation there.
Gary and Nick, and for the people that hung around for an hour listening to us talk, thank you so much for engaging with us here. And Gary and Nick, anytime. It's a pleasure to work with you, and let's do some more interesting things together.
Yes, absolutely.
Sounds good. Nick, are you seeing this comment from Fatima asking for Alex's contact information?
Alex, is that all right if I include your email in the follow-up? Perfect.
Yeah. One other thing, my daughter helped me create a website for the book.
Awesome, awesome.
It's called, if you go to the entrepreneurwithinbook.com, I have a website up about the book. You can't order it on that site, but it gives you a lot of information about the book, and you'll see this podcast this webinar residing there very soon.
Great. I just put that in the chat, everyone. So Fatima, check there as well. And I'll make sure to include a link to both that website and the Amazon link in the follow-up for folks.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Of course.
The paperback will be available end of the month sometime.
Good.
Awesome.
Good.
Awesome.
Sounds great. Alex, thanks so much for joining us on this webinar. I have really enjoyed this conversation. Look forward to.
Great.
And I don't know, are we going? I think we're coming out to see you in San Diego in April. I'm not sure.
I hope so. I hope so. Check
Yeah.
our website out at thelavincenter.sdsu.edu and consider coming to San Diego. And
Yeah, you won't have to twist my arm. Right, right. Thank you, Alex. And thank you everyone for being here. And thank you, Nick. Thanks for making this happen.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Take care.
Bye, guys.